When my sister Sarah and I were kids, our family lived for a while in a charming old farmhouse. We loved exploring its dusty corners and climbing the apple tree in the backyard. But our favorite thing was a ghost. We called her Mother, as she seemed so kind and nurturing. Some days, Sarah and I would wake up, and on each of our nightstands, we'd find a cup that hadn't been there the night before. And back then, we just thought she wanted to care of us by putting a cup of water in the room, in case we got thirsty or something. And among the home's original furnishings was an antique wooden chair, which we kept against the back wall of the living room. And whenever we were there, watching TV or playing a game, Mother would move that chair forward, across the room, toward us. Sometimes she'd manage to move it all the way to the center of the room. We always felt sad putting it back against the wall. Mother just wanted to be near us. That's all. Years later, long after we'd moved out, I found an old newspaper article about the farmhouse's original occupant, a widow. She'd murdered her 2 children by giving them each a cup of poisoned milk before bed. Then she hung herself. The article included some photos of the farmhouse's living room, and one of the photos had a woman's body hanging from a beam. And beneath her was that old wooden chair, placed exactly in the center of the room. This story happened back in 1972. I was out enjoying the night of Halloween when suddenly my legs started to hurt like hell. But thankfully, my house was very nearby, so I simply called it a day and just headed home. And back home, I found that my dad was about to leave for a night off with his folks. So in minutes, I was left totally by myself. An hour later, I was laying on the couch eating some candy, when suddenly my body went numb and I couldn't move. Then, my vision started looking weird, kind of wavy with very contrasted colors. I tried to scream, but no sound came out of my mouth. I was left in this nightmarish state for quite a few minutes before I was suddenly able to move my head again. I was looking around the room when I saw a tall figure, walking very slowly in the living room. The figure didn't want to scare me or anything. It was simply moving slowly towards the door as if it was invisible to everyone else. Then, it all ended. Simple as that. And I was able to move my whole body again. I told my mom about it later along with a few of my friends. And of course, nobody believed me. If any of you have any good explanations on why this happened, please tell me. It was our 3rd date, when Samantha decided to confront me with the truth, when she suddenly stated that there's something I need to know. So, here it comes. She'll probably friend zone me right now. I gave her the green light to go ahead. Then she said the most awkward shit ever. She simply said that she had a removable face. And honestly, that was a new one. I was about to laugh, but she was wearing a deadly serious expression. So I had to ask if that was a metaphor or something. She stared at me for a few seconds. Then she lifted her chin and traced her jawline with a finger, and asked me to look closely. It was very hard to see, but she was right. I saw a tiny gap between her neck skin and her face. I mean, with her fucking fake face. She calmly instructed me not to ask any questions, as she can't tell me any details. And if that fake face thing is going to be a problem, then we should break up in peace and act as if we never met. And for me, 1 minute was fairly enough to make a decision. Not a problem. So what? You have a removable face. Who cares? It looks good.
There's something else. Once a day, usually in the evening, I have to remove the face and disinfect the inside of the mask. Because if I don't, it will rot. This takes about an hour, depending on how my day went. During this time, you must never ever look at my real face. Do you understand?
I nodded positively. Honestly, I was still in shock of the fucking weird situation I was going through. Maybe she had had a horrible accident where her flesh had been mangled. Maybe her face had been melted by acid or burned by fire. I don't know. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I was picturing a face of raw, naked muscle rotting away. What if I wanted to kiss her? Will I be really kissing her? Or just kissing the bloody and squishy skin under her fucking mask? 7 months have passed now, and yes, we're still together. And you know what? I'm deeply in love with this girl. We just kept dating. Then Samantha moved into my humble house, and the best of it all, we decided to get married. And for the most part, it was a completely normal relationship, typical of two young people in love, building a life together. During the day, it was easy to forget about the face altogether. It looked natural enough for me. I did occasionally ask her about it, how it was possible to make the removable face look so real, and what it really looked like underneath. I tried to coax her into showing me, but she never showed me or told me the story behind it. She'd just shrug and say that she can't show me or tell me anything about her face for my own safety. I never told anybody about Samantha's removable face. It's not that she asked me not to. I just didn't think it was anybody's business. Except once, when I did tell somebody, my best friend, Chris. He laughed at first, thought I was shitting him into a dumb joke or something, but later on, he realized I was not joking. And of course, he proposed the most obvious thing ever. Why don't I pick on her? But he'll never understand how much I respect women in general, and how much I respect Samantha in particular. I shrugged it off, then we started falling back to other topics for the night. And before we head home, we planned on spending the weekend at my house. That night, all three of us were having a good time in the backyard. Then out of a sudden my boss called, so I excused them. 10 minutes later, I heard the screams coming from inside the house. Both my best friend and my wife were screaming in terror. I dropped the phone and ran into the house and down the hall to our bedroom. Through the open door, I could see that the door to the master bathroom was wide open. Then I heard Samantha screaming at me to not come in.
He looked. He fucking looked.
She kept saying he looked. Apparently Chris peeked from the door at Samantha, and what he saw made him scream hysterically. Suddenly Chris picked up his keychain and started stabbing his car key into his eyes, till what's left of his eyes had fallen off his face, leaving a leaking eye holes of blood and emptiness. He was clearly in the depths of madness, and it turned my stomach to see him mutilate himself.
What are you staring at? Call a fucking ambulance right now, and don't come here. Just don't.
I turned and ran back to the side yard, where my phone was lying in the grass. I noticed that my boss was still on the line. Maybe he was curious to know what caused all this screaming he was hearing. Anyways, I hung up on him and immediately called 911. When the paramedics arrived, Chris was having a seizure in the hallway until they took him away. Afterwards, Samantha kept sobbing. Her face was on, but it had been quickly done, and everything looked a little off. My world has been dark this past week. My best friend is in a psychiatric hospital under suicide watch. He's completely blind and mostly catatonic, except when he slips into a violent babbling mania. The doctors are optimistic that his state is temporary, but they don't know the truth about what caused it. Because I told the paramedics that Chris had taken a large dose of psychedelic mushrooms and fallen into psychosis, I saw no good reason to tell the truth about what had happened. Who would believe that one look at my wife's real face would make somebody insane? They'd probably put me in the room next to Chris if I ever said something like this. Anyways, since that day, Samantha is in a state of her own. She still cleans the inside of her face, though not as regularly, and when she puts it back on, it's always crooked. It has even started to smell a little bit. I've tried to assure her that it wasn't her fault, but she never gave me any reaction. She was mentally isolated from everything. As for me, I am doing my best to hold it together. Maybe Samantha is cursed. Maybe Chris was in fact on some sort of drugs and he was hallucinating what he saw. I have no idea. But do you know what's strange? Despite what happened to Chris, I still find myself curious about what my wife's real face looks like. It all started back in 1974. When I was a successful journalist everyone wanted to be like. I was going back home after a long day of work, and all what I was thinking about was Richard Nixon, who was just airing his resignation this morning. They even gave us an allowance to leave work at 12 p.m. that day. But of course, I was from the unlucky bastards who had to stay for a full shift to cover the news. Anyways, while I was on my usual everyday path, I had a sense of something off going on, as there was a car following me from distance. But honestly, that driver was a stupid fucker to think that I won't hear him driving behind me. I tried walking a little bit faster, but he kept accelerating to catch up while maintaining the same distance between us. So, I took the decision. I stopped, turned around, and looked at him straight in the eyes. I was stupid, I know. Maybe if I just ran off instead of stopping, I wouldn't be locked up in a fucking cell later. Who knows? Anyways, as when I turned around to look at the guy following me, I simply found no guy. In fact, what I saw was an old lady. She smiled at me in the most friendly way you can imagine. She was a lot older of what I expected a night stalker to be. I felt I knew this woman from somewhere, but I just can't remember. She suddenly got out of her car and started approaching me in very slow steps. I hesitated, thought of walking away, running as fast as I could, but I just didn't. She kept walking until she was few steps away from me. "How are you, Smirky?" she said. And in case you don't know, Smirky was my nickname during my miserable childhood. And no, I wasn't terrified, cause at this point, I was sure this old woman is a boring old relative whom I don't have a memory of, just like the rest of my family. I prepared myself to some boring family conversation, but she didn't even wait for my answer. She patted me on the shoulder and told me to take care of myself and went on her way. Okay, that didn't go as I expected. She isn't a night thug thief or a weird stalker. She's just an old woman who seems to know me for ages. And if that's the case, why didn't she just came over to say hi the moment she saw me, instead of just following me from a distance like a weirdo? A few minutes later, I was home, just to find that my dad and my stepmother were brutally murdered. I tried saving them as much as I can, took out the knife from Dad's chest, but that didn't help. I was in shock. I kept on crying and screaming like a maniac. And the next thing I remember is the police cuffing me out of the house. And not just that, they even accused me of murdering my own family. No matter how much I tried to explain what really happened, no one believed me. Till that one day.
Hey Sam, you have a visitor.
I went out to attend the visit session for the first time since I came to this filthy place. It's her, the old woman I met that other day.
Hi, sweetie. I know you don't know me, and I bet you've tried to, but I just know you will never remember me. I'm your mom's sweetheart. I know your dad had told you I was dead since you were a kid, but the truth is, he did that to protect you from me, your drunk mom who had an extreme drinking issues. And after I was arrested a couple of times, we got divorced, and your dad had took you by court orders. And yes, I'm the one who killed him and his whore. All I wanted from him was to see you in person and to tell you that I was alive. Your mom is alive and waiting for you. But he and his wife treated me as if I was a beggar, a worthless human that doesn't even deserve to live at all. I don't want you to worry, sweetie. I'll get you out of here tonight. I'll leave my apartment door open so they can find my dead body probably by the morning. I'll leave a recorded tape by me. This tape will be more than enough for the police to set you free and convict me for the murder you're accused of doing. All I wanted is to see you before I leave. And I'm sorry for everything.